Okay, the first thing we're going to look at is the almost completed air compressor that comes with the kit. Just finished applying all the decals. This kit comes with an amazing amount of decals. That's the decal sheet. There's decals for almost every part in this kit. Now the instructions tell you to use this or this or this or this, but in my opinion, you can just get a little creative and apply the decals wherever you want. Now what I did was apply the first label to the front of the compressor, and then apply the information label to the rear, along with the Wind King label, the trademark of the company that I guess that built this compressor. And then added a warning label to the compressor itself and the info label to the motor for the compressor. I think this gives a much more realistic appearance than just adding one label, as if you look at most compressors, they are filled with warning labels and information labels and company trademark labels. So I think this looks a little better than just applying the one. It's a very nice assembly. The one thing I do have to tell you to be on the lookout for is this seam on the compressor assembly itself. When you join the two halves together, the seam is very visible, as there is a bit of a gap there. So you're going to have to fill it in. I use the super glue method of filling in the seams and then just sanded it down by just applying a dab of super glue on the seam, letting it dry. It seals it up, and when you sand it down and put a little paint on it, it's almost as if the seam was never there. I found this method works very well, as the putty such as Perfect Plastic, which I like using, and the Tamiya putty, which I also like using, have a tendency to shrink, and then you have to go over and apply a putty a second or even a third time. The super glue method for the smaller seams works very well and doesn't really have an issue with the shrinking. So there we have the first part. This kit is basically a bunch of little mini builds, all joined up together to make the garage diorama. I've applied a little bit of weathering to the compressor itself, to the motor assembly to give it an in-use look. I detailed the rear of the motor assembly. This is done with Tamiya Blue, Tamiya Titanium Silver, Tamiya Bare Metal Silver, and Tamiya Flat and Semi-Gloss Black. It's a very nice looking assembly. I like the way it looks. The details, while not over the top, are good enough to give a nice appearance. Let's take a look at some of the other things that we've had going on here. Here I've applied a bit of paint to a bunch of the other parts. This is the fire extinguisher, which also comes with its own set of labels, decals. As you can see, the extinguisher labels, the information labels, all done very well. You may have to apply a little bit of decal setting solution so it conforms to the decals conform to the curve of the extinguisher, and it still needs quite a bit of detail painting left to do, as I've got to clear coat it just to seal the labels up and then finish off all the rest of the details on the extinguisher. One thing I did do was I hollowed out the, let's see if we can give you a look at that. That, when you put the two halves of the extinguisher together, The extinguisher nozzle is actually solid across. So if you want a more realistic appearance, you're going to have to hollow that out. I just put a hobby knife in there and just cut away at it until I got it nice and wide open. And then I just use a toothpick to hold it as I'm painting. But it does give you a much more realistic appearance than just having that flat bottom to the nozzle. So here we have the rest of the parts. Here we have our engine stand assembly. Also, there is also one decal available for that. Here is the crank, which is going to require a little bit of detail painting. There is the engine mount itself, which is a pretty good representation of it, considering I have a real one in my garage and looks just like it. So here we have the soda machine all painted up, waiting for decals, and then a nice clear coat, and then some bare metal foil to take care of the chrome decals on it, the chrome details on the machine. Now, to my favorite part of this build so far. This is one of the figures that comes with it. Now, as I stated before, I am doing a Star Trek theme to this build, and that being the case, the figures are going to be dressed in the uniforms from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which are some of my favorite of all the Star Trek uniforms. Now, I've had to modify the figures a bit, such as they all were short sleeve figures, so what I did was I filled in the arms from the sleeves down to make them long sleeved, and there is a bit of a cuff on the end, just like in the Deep Space Nine uniforms. And I had to do a little bit of filling in on the shoulders where the arms attach, just to smooth that out, and then that will be painted in the customary Star Trek colors with the undershirt there on the collar painted whatever color the uniform requires. Here is the other figure. Again, so quite a bit of work to do on the arms there. Well, this is going to combine two of my favorite things, Star Trek and model building. Well, three, and the automotive world. So here we go with, one other note. There are prominent seams on the tank itself for the compressor. Those, again, you will have to do quite a bit of filling and smoothing out with to get rid of, so that you have a nice round compressor. This is the oil drum, which also has prominent seams. I filled these, but I didn't want them to disappear completely, as most oil drums are stamped steel, which is rounded off and then joined on each end. And I kind of wanted to have that look of the seam that's welded together. So I think I'm getting what I want without totally eliminating the seam. And here we have the top cover, as this is an assembly of two parts joined together. You'll have a seam here for where the two parts meet, and here. Now this is the top, so what I tried to do was make the seam part of the kit by completing it all the way around. Didn't quite get the result I was hoping. I'm going to have to see if I can clean that up a little bit, so that now the drum actually has a top that's inserted into it like a real drum. So that is all we've got going on with this right now. As we continue on with our tip-top shop build, making modifications as we go along. It's a fun little ride. So remember, if you like what you see, subscribe, like the video, and join me on the next one. Talk to you later.